Revelation 12:6 says, "And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,203 days." Why does this verse appear here immediately after Christ's ascension? Because prophecy is structured intentionally. After verse 5 shows Christ caught up to God and to his throne, verse 6 jumps forward to show what happens to the church on earth. This is not chronological confusion, it is prophetic design. Verse 6 functions as a summary statement. It introduces the historical persecution of God's church before the chapter steps back in verses 7 to 12 to explain the heavenly origin of the conflict. The structure shows us that earthly persecution is rooted in a cosmic controversy. Who is the woman in this verse? The woman is the same covenant community introduced in verses 1 to 2. She represents God's faithful people from Old Testament Israel through the New Testament church. She is not a denomination, not an institution, but the true line of believers who remain loyal to God's covenant. When the dragon fails to destroy the male child, he turns against the woman. The target shifts from Christ to his body, the church. What does it mean that the woman fled into the wilderness? In Scripture, the wilderness is a place of divine preservation. Israel was preserved in the wilderness. Elijah was sustained in the wilderness. The wilderness is not a place of abandonment. It is a place of protection and purification. Here it represents a historical period when the visible dominance of the church was replaced by obscurity. The faithful were driven away from centers of power. They were marginalized, persecuted, and often forced into remote places. But they were not destroyed. They were hidden. What is the significance of a place prepared by God? This phrase reveals divine sovereignty. The woman did not wander into safety by accident. God prepared a place. That means the period of persecution was not outside of heaven's knowledge or control. Before the dragon intensified his attack, provision was already arranged. God does not always remove his people from crisis, but he always sets boundaries around it. Even in the darkest centuries, God governed history. What are the 1,260 days? The text says the woman would be nourished for 1,203 days, which equals 1,260 days. According to the prophetic principle established in Scripture, a prophetic day represents a literal year. Numbers 14:34, Ezekiel 4:6. Therefore, 1,260 prophetic days equal 1,260 literal years. This same time period appears repeatedly in prophecy as 42 months, Revelation 11:2, 13:5, and as time, times, and half a time, Daniel 7:25, Revelation 12:14. The repetition across Daniel and Revelation confirms that this is a defined historical era, not symbolic exaggeration. When did the 1,260 years begin and end? Within the historicist prophetic framework, this period began in 538 AD, when the Bishop of Rome gained unchallenged religious political authority after the removal of opposing powers. It ended in 1798 AD, when the papal power received a decisive blow as the Pope was taken captive by French forces. From 538 to 1798 spans exactly 1,260 years. During this time, religious authority merged with civil power, and dissenting believers were persecuted. Yet the prophecy shows that even in this period, the woman was nourished. Why did God allow such a long period of persecution? Because the great controversy must reveal the true nature of enforced religion. When religious authority combines with state power, coercion replaces conviction. God allows freedom even when it is misused, so that the universe may see the difference between forced worship and voluntary loyalty. The 1,260 years demonstrate what happens when human authority attempts to replace divine authority. Was the church defeated during this time? No. The text says she was fed, she was nourished, Scripture survived, truth survived, a faithful remnant remained. Even when Bibles were restricted and believers were oppressed, God sustained sustained his covenant line. The wilderness was not extinction, it was preservation. What does Revelation 12:6 teach the end time church? It teaches that God controls prophetic time. The period was measured, it had a beginning and an end. Evil operates only within limits permitted by God. If God preserved his church through 1,260 years of pressure, he will preserve his people in the final crisis. The dragon rages, but he is not sovereign. The woman flees, but she is not forsaken. Revelation 12:6 is not a verse of despair. It is a declaration of divine governance over history. The church may be driven into wilderness seasons, but it is sustained by heaven. It may lose visibility, but it does not lose identity. It may be pressured, but it cannot be erased. The same God who measured 1,260 years still measures the final events of history. And just as that period ended on time, so the great controversy itself will end according to heaven's timetable.